The topic of my presentation is the faunal background of the Iron Age culture of Middle Mahanadi Valley, Odisha. It is a joint paper by me, Dr. P.K. Behra and Dr. Shakir Hussain. So what do we mean when we talk about the Middle Mahanadi Valley? So this is a region which is a distinct geographical entity lying between the Chhattisgarh plains and the coastal plains of Odisha. Physiographically, the river Mahanadi flows between the northern uplands, an extension of the Chota Nagpur Plateau, and the southern western hilly region of Odisha highlands. And this is a very resourceful zone. There are lots of metals which are available in this zone. The zone is also rich both in terms of flora and fauna. And archaeologically also, this region is very rich. So keeping in view the archaeological importance of this region, Dr. P.K. Behra, the second author of this paper of Sambalpur University, during the last 2.5 decades, has been systematically exploring this region, uh, and he has during these exploration he has recorded a large number of sites, and he has also conducted a series of text excavations which has resulted in the discovery of large number of settlement sites spanning in date from the Neolithic period to the early historic period. Of the investigated sites in the region, there are large number of sites which are having affinity with Iron Age and early historical period. Hmm? And unlike the coastal region of Odisha, in this region, the Iron Age culture generally is preceded by the Chalcolithic farming communities, which can be dated back to early 3rd millennium BCE. So on the basis of stratigraphic succession of ceramic assemblages observed at various test excavation sites and other associated materials, in addition to few radiocarbon dates, uh, obtained from different labels. The Iron Age at this region can be broadly classified into 3 different subphases: early Iron Age, middle Iron phase, and late Iron phase. So this is a map which shows the explored and excavated early settlements in this region in the Middle Mahanadi Valley. So you can see these have been numbered, and so there are a few sites which belong to the Neolithic period. Then some have revealed the material evidence of Chalcolithic. Then we have Iron Age, early historic. So almost all the culture material have been found in this region. So let's concentrate on the Iron Age, which is the main topic of presentation. So as I have already told you that this can be broadly classified into 3 different phases. So phase 1, or it is also known by the name of early Iron Age. It has been the evidence for this stage has been observed in a number of sites. So 4 sites have been given here, like Kapasira, Kantipuleswara, Subalia. So this phase is characterized by the continuation of most of the culture features that we generally see in the Chalcolithic cultures, besides introduction of iron technology. So we start to get evidence of iron artifacts, and the available radiocarbon dates from this phase range between this and this. And these have been obtained from the sites of Kantipuleswar and Kameswarpalli. And the ceramic industry of this phase is mainly represented by the burnished red slipped ware, a few of which are also painted in white, plain as well as white painted black and red ware, plain red ware, and a few black slipped ware and dark gray ware. So these are the characteristic ceramics that we found in phase 1. When we move to the phase 2, then this phase is is represented in a number of sites. And this phase is characterized by proliferation of BSW and very fine glossy BRW. Okay, so these are the different ceramics which generally we notice during this culture phase. And in addition, we also find white painted designs almost in every cases occur on the outer surface of the vessels. And while there is an abundance of graffiti marked pottery in different wear types, a few black on red wear potteries also make their presence felt. And the available radiocarbon dates have been listed here. Then when we move to the phase 3 or the late iron phase, this phase has been also witnessed in a number of sites. So some of the sites have been listed here, like Kumarsinga, Badamal, Kantipuleswar, Kameswarpalli, Nagar. So this phase is characterized by the continuation of most of the culture features of the preceding Iron Age phase 2, besides introduction of megalithic monuments towards the later stages of this culture phase. And radiocarbon dates are available from this phase also. So now I'll be focusing more on the faunal data that has been excavated from a number of these sites. Okay, so I have studied so far 8 sites from this region. So these sites are the site of Badamal, also known by the name of Asurgarh, then Tarapurgarh, Kapasira, Khejripalli, Amuda, Kumarsingha, Kurmapadar, and Kantipuleshwar. So some of the faunal reports have already been published, and some have been submitted for publication. Hopefully, will be published by the end of this year. So most of these excavations are small level excavations. These are not large scale excavations. So in most of the cases, 2 or 3 trenches were excavated, and but the material was systematically collected, and the faunal material which was recovered during the course of excavation was also systematically collected, properly labeled and packed at the site during the course of excavation. Later on, this material was uh, transported to the Archaeozoology Laboratory, Deccan College, Pune, where I analyzed the material of these sites. So far we have data from these sites. Okay, so as the sites were excavated on a smaller scale, so faunal material recovered from this site is not very huge. So we generally the material that has come from one side include around 2,000 to 3,000 bones, and sometimes we in one of the sites we have only 1,500 skeletal elements. But these most of these elements were very well preserved, and these have given us some very valuable insights about the animal-based subsistence activities which were prevalent during the Iron Age period in the middle Mahanadi Valley of Odisha. And one important thing that we need to take into consideration is that Odisha is one of the very important region to understand past human-animal interactions in the Indian subcontinent. But so far, no faunal studies had taken place there. Only there are a couple of, in addition to the studies that I'm talking about today, I can name a couple of more studies that have been done so far. So these are the only faunal studies that have been conducted in this region. While this region is really a very important region because this falls in the eastern part of India. In northeastern part of India, again the soil is acidic. So even if excavation takes place there, we do not get faunal material. So we do not have information regarding the past animal interactions in that part of the subcontinent. Similarly, we have very less data from the region of Bengal, even from Bihar. Very faunal material from very few sites have been subjected to analysis. So the data from this region is very few. So whatever data we have, it should be considered as valuable data. And in future, we should try to get and recover more data by conducting systematic excavations. And we should try to conduct large scale excavations in one of these sites and try to get a large number of bones, because the more the number of bones, the more effective our interpretation will be. So because of the data is very less, we won't be able to say so many things about the past human interactions. It will just tell us what type of animals were present and what was their relative proportion in different iron phases in one site. That's what we can say on the basis of this data. So far we have only this type of data, but this data is again a very important data. I'm emphasizing again and again on this because we do not have any other data from that part of the subcontinent. So whatever we have, it should be considered valuable. And after seeing the value of this data, one should go for a large scale excavation, collect a large number of bones, and these bones should be systematically analyzed in laboratory. So whatever bones were recovered from these sites, these were categorized into two subcategories: identified fragments, which could be identified, and unidentified fragments. So there were some fragments which couldn't be identified because there were no morphological features present on these bones. But these unidentified fragments weren't thrown away. These were further classified into as large sized, medium sized, small sized, and their number was recorded. This was done to understand the site formation process or the number or the type of fragmentation in different culture levels. Okay, so the unidentified large were those fragments which were more than 5 centimeters in size. Unidentified medium were those fragments which were between 2 and 5 centimeters in size, and below 2 centimeter were recorded as unidentified small. Then the identified fragments again were divided into two distinct categories: rough NISP count, diagnostic NISP count. Now the rough NISP counts were those counts which could be identified up to general level. For example, there are a number of skeletal elements like ribs and vertebrae, and which are similar in almost every animal. So the ribs of cow, buffalo, nilgai, sambar, because these animals are of similar size, so their ribs will also be similar. So if there is no prominent morphological feature present on these ribs in the form of heads, rib heads, and some other characteristic features, it will be very difficult to identify them as belonging to one particular species. So in those cases, the same can be said about tooth fragments, and the same you can say about the external bodies and the vertebral fragments. So in those cases, these were counted as just roughness counts, and broad categories like large-sized mammals, medium-sized mammals, and small-sized mammals. These sort of categories were uh, created to record these. While there were a number of other skeletal elements which could be identified up to species level, and these were properly identified, and these were recorded as diagnostic NISP counts. And while recording process, uh, these bones also revealed a large number of bone modifications. Some of these bone modifications were done by humans, like there were lots of cut marks, chop marks, there were charring marks. Then there were some natural modifications also, like there were teeth marks uh, of carnivores, rodents. And then there were some bones which were porous in nature, and there were some bones which showed the rolling effect. Uh, okay, so in some cases, the outer crust of the bones were coming out. So whatever was observable, whatever could be observed, all of these things were properly systematically recorded. And if the bones were measurable, these were also measured by using digital calipers. So now it won't be possible for me to go to each of these sites one by one. So it will take a long time. So what I'll do, I'll just go through 3 sites quickly, and then I try to highlight the salient features that all of these sites tell us, and what could be done in future. So that will form the rest of the presentation. So first site is the site of Badamal, or the Asurgur. So it is located about half a kilometer southwest of the village of the same name. Okay, the site was subjected to a limited scale excavation in 2002 and 3 by Sambalpur University in 2 different localities. So the excavation revealed 2 distinct phases of occupation: Iron Age and early historic period. Now this Iron Age can further be subdivided into 3 different phases: early Iron Age, middle Iron phase, and late Iron phase. So these are the, so I'll be talking only about the material that has come out from uh, RNA's context. So as you can see, the number of bones which were studied from these 3 different phases is very small. So a total of 124 animal skeletal elements were studied from period 1A, total of 494 was studied from period 1B, and 23 was studied from period 1C. So out of which 83 could be identified in period 1A, so which forms around 66.93% of the level of identification. In period view, 350 skeletal elements could be identified, which form 70.85%. And in period C, only 8 could be identified. Overall, the number of fragments coming out from this period C was very small, and even from this small assemblage, only 8 could be properly identified. So the level of identification in period C was very less. So you can see that there were different levels of identification in different phases. The bones were very well preserved during the period 1P. Period 1A also revealed a good amount of preserved bones, while in period C, there were lots of bones were fragmented, because of which they were not identifiable. Okay, so these were the animals which could be identified from these three different phases. So among the domestic animals which were identified, we had cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, and dog. There was no pig. One of the important aspect of these iron age sites that I'm talking today is the presence of pigs and absence of pigs. In some of the sites, we see the presence of pigs, but in some of the sites, we do not find the presence of pigs. So this is a question that we need to answer by doing further studies. That was there some sort of a social distinction to eat pork or not to eat pork? Okay. Then there were a number of wild mammals that were also represented in the assemblies. So the wild mammals which were identified include nilgai, sambar, spotted deer, panther, Indian hare, porcupine, mongoose. And in addition to these mammalian species, there was one reptile in the form of Indian sawback turtle. So these were the animals which could be identified in this assemblies. So some of the bones that you can see, so these are the femoral heads of cattle. And here you can see again, all of these are cattle bones, but some of the bones you can see that these are highly encrusted bones. So in the earliest phase, in the earliest early iron phase, some of the bones were highly encrusted in nature, while this sort of incrustation was not seen in the other two phases. Okay, so again, some other skeletal fragments. So here you can see an angular fragment of a deer called sambar, then skeletal elements. This is a carapace fragment of a turtle. Okay, this is a mandibular fragment of a carnivore and some other smaller mammals. And these are some mandibular fragments. So if we look at their percentages, so they form a percentage relative proportion like this. So we'll be talking about this later on. So I'll not devote more time here. So now let's move to the second site, the site of Kapasira. So this site is located about 15 kilometers northwest of Subarnapur district of Odisha. It was also subjected to a small scale excavation in three different localities in 2006 by the postgraduate department of history, Sambalpur University, Odisha. And this is a general view of that site. And here again, you can see the excavation yielded different layers, and these excavated layers yielded cultural remains belonging to Iron Age, which can further be subdivided into three types: early Iron Age, middle Iron Age, and late Iron Age, or phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So again, if you see here, the details of faunal material that was studied from the site, then we find that a total of 1004 skeletal elements which could be identified. The other elements were recorded as large size fragments, medium sized fragments, and small size fragments. So if you notice at these three, then you'll find that the small size, it is the small size fragments which are more in number. So it shows that the bones were highly fragmented. This was specifically noticed in the earliest phase. In the other two phases, the bones were quite well preserved. So the number of animals that have been identified from this site again include a similar set of animals. Now here in Badmal, the pig was absent, but now here we have the evidence of pig. So the domestic animals which were represented include cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, pig, and dog. The wild mammals, we see some changes. So some of the animals are added here, and some of the animals are missing. So we have the evidence of nilgai, sambar, spotted deer, chinkara, wolf, Indian hare, porcupine, and mongoose. In Badmal, we were having evidence of only one reptile, but here we have evidence of three reptilian species, three turtle species. So we have evidence of Ganges soft-shell turtle, we have evidence of Indian roof turtle, and Indian flap-shell turtle. Then there were also two skeletal elements of birds, but it was not possible to identify these fragments up to the species level. So these fragments were just recorded as those belonging to bird bones only. Then assemblies also threw light on the evidence of two molluscan species. These were lamellidans and one unidentified species of freshwater vival, and not even a single fish bone has been recorded in the studies assemblies. So if you look here, and even in Badmal, and even when I'll show you the other side, then you'll find that it is the remains of mammals which are represented well. If you look at the non-mammalian remains, these are not represented. Even if they are represented, their number is very less. For example, there were only 2 skeletal elements of birds. There were no evidence of fish. Even the number of these turtle shells was very less compared to the mammalian remains. Okay, and it is really surprising because most of these sites are located on the banks of River Mahanadi, and River Mahanadi has a very good uh, number of fish species. So were these fish not exploited by these people, or there is some other region of their absence at these sites? So if you look again, if you look at the identified and unidentified fragments in different phases, then we see almost a similar sort of a picture. Okay, the similar set of level of identification, but the highest fragmentation you see during the late iron phase or the phase 3. Otherwise, a similar sort of picture has been noticed in all the 3 phases. So now again, these are some mandibular fragments. Here you can see cattle mandibles. Here you can see one maxillary fragment. This is a maxillary fragment of a pig. This is a mandibular fragment. And again, these are some mandibular fragments. Then this is a cattle radius, and you can notice here some cut marks, 2 parallel stations you can see here. This is an antler fragment. And again, here you can notice a sharp cut. So this portion is grinded also. So it seems that this antler fragment might have been used for making some sort of an artifact. Again, some other antler fragments. Here also, you might find that some of these might have been used for making some or other artifact. So if we look at their proportion, so we find this sort of a proportion, and similar sort of proportion was seen at the site of Badamal also. So in most of the site, in fact, whatever sites I have studied so far, it is always the remains of cattle and buffalo which dominate the assemblage, which make the majority. And this is not only the case of RNA sites in this region. In fact, this is the case of almost most of the protohistoric sites in Indian subcontinent. So it is generally the skeletal elements of cattle and buffalo which dominate the assemblage, followed by the remains of sheep and goat. Then we have these pigs, and pigs are generally rare in almost every site. Then there are wild mammals, but their number is very, very low compared to the domestic animals. And as I already told you, that the remains of reptiles, birds, mollusks, and other non-mammalian fauna is very less. Now, if we look at the third site, the site of Kantipuleshwar, so this site is located on the confluence of the river Mahanadi and its tributary known as Sindhol Jor. And this site was subjected to a small scale excavation in 3 different localities in 2005. This is a general view of that site. So again, in this site, we got the evidence of iron phases, all the 3 phases, early iron age, middle iron phase, and late iron phase. Then this is the details of faunal material studied from this site. So almost 72.36%. So the bones which were recovered from this site were very well preserved, and they revealed a lots of identifiable fragments. And almost same set of animals, whatever was noticed. So now if you study these sites, you'll find that some animal is missing in one side and some animal is added in another side. So we shouldn't take this seriously, because almost the environment of almost all of these sites is same. So all of these animals were occurring in surrounding areas of these sites. So, and we need to keep in mind that the sites were excavated only on a very small scale. Only 2-3 trenches were excavated. So the animals which are missing in these trenches, excavated trenches, they might be recovered from some other trenches. So what we need to do, as I have told in the beginning itself, that we need to excavate specifically one RNA site on a larger scale. So it will give us a clearer picture. Okay, so now here again, the same set of domestic animals, cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, pig, and dog. So pig is present here. And same set of wild animals like nilgai, sambar, barasingha. One important discovery is of barasingha, which is found from this site only. Then we have evidence of barking deer also, which is also found from this site only. Then we have evidence of black buck. In the last site in Kapasara, we were having evidence of gazelle. Here we have evidence of black buck, then porcupine. And again, there are uh, different species of turtles. Now here we have fish in the form of only 2 fragments, which is again surprising because site is located very close to the river. And uh, it really seems impossible that these people were not eating fish. Okay, so now I'll show you some more pictures. So again, you can see some skeletal elements of cattle or Bos indicus. So this is a proximal part of a radius, and here you can also notice some cut marks. These are some isolated teeth. This is a femur. You can also notice charring here. These are femoral fragments. Then these are the skeletal fragments of pigs. You can see the isolated teeth, then the occipital region of a pig cranium, then 2 mandibular fragments and metapodials. Then these are the reptiles, the turtle evidence in the form of Carpacea and plastron fragments. Here, these are the only 2 fish bones which were present at the sites. Then here you can see, then this is an ulna which has been attempted to make into some artifact. It is difficult to say for what purpose it was modified. And there are some antler fragments. And one important aspect of these RNA sites is the frequent occurrence of panther bones. So yeah, we have evidence of panther from the site of Badamal. Then we have a large number of panther bones from the site of Kurumpadar. And we have a site of panther from one more site. If and generally we believe if we are getting the bones of these animals, it might be an accidental inclusion or a late intrusion. But it doesn't seem to be the case in these iron's 8 sites. So these out of 8 sites, these panther remains are present in 3 archaeological sites. And even they might be present in other sites if we excavate those sites further. And we are getting good number of bones of these animals. For example, see here. So we have 2 phalanges, so many metapodials, astragalus, we have calcaneum also. And most of these bones generally contain the non-meat bearing bones or the bones which are occurring in the paw region. So were these people hunting panther and were bringing out the paw of panther uh, in the sites for some specific purpose? We can't say for sure, but the evidence is certainly indicating in that sort of respect, because whatever bones have or panther have been recovered so far from these different sites, these are only belonging to the paw region or the leg region, non-meat bearing bones. We are not getting bones from any other part. The hypothesis might change if further data comes and we might get some other bones also, but so far whatever evidence is in front of us, it is indicating in this sort of a pattern. So let's discuss. So I have just uh, given you a brief review of the data that has been coming from 3 sites. 5 more sites have been analyzed, and it won't be possible to go through each site one by one. So we'll just summarize the result and we'll see some pattern that have been emerging. So although the faunal assemblages at these sites are very small, these represent the remains of animals used in full-fledged protohistoric subsistence system. So now we know the idea what type of animals these inhabitants or these RNAs people were regularly using. So this subsistence system involved the utilization of both domestic and wild animals. However, if we compare the number of domestic animals with those of wild animals, then we find that wild animals are very uh, less in compared to the domestic ones. So this shows that wild resources did not play a very major role in the subsistence activity of the inhabitants at these sites. And mostly people were relying on domestic animals, and that then again on cattle, buffalo, sheep, and goat. Pig also that is present in some sites and that, absent in some sites. So we need to explore that further. But these wild animals were present in almost every site. So it seems that hunting was existing, means people were hunting these animals. That's why we have evidence of these animals. But this activity was not having a major role in the society. Okay, so most of the needs were most probably were fulfilled by the domestic animals. So though the hunting of wild animals did not play an important part in the subsistence activities, inhabitants at these sites were hunting a variety of wild herbivores, and we have evidence of nilgai in almost every site. We have evidence of sambar from almost every site. Spotted deer is also again present in almost every site. Then we have black-backed gazelle. So these were some of the common animals which are present in the faunal assemblages in these sites, and these were commonly hunted. Okay, so it is difficult to say whether the hunting activities were carried out close to the settlement or in regions far away from the settlement. It is quite likely that many of these animals were hunted for their horn cores and antlers. As I showed you in one of the sites, that some of the we have evidence of grinding and cut marks and some sort of a modification in a number of antlers. For instance, if you look at the phase 2 at Kantipaleshwar, the sambar was represented only in the form of antlers. So only antlers were present, and some of these antlers were modified also. So it is a possibility that many of these animals might have been hunted to exploit these antlers, and these antlers then may be further used for as a raw material for making different types of objects. Then, while we have the remains of reptiles, birds, fish, molluscan shells, these are underrepresented. As you have just seen that in some sites there are only 2 fish fragments. In some sites there are only 2 bird fragments. So these animals were exploited. However, in some way their bones are not represented. So it shows that these animals were exploited by the inhabitants of these sites. That is for sure. Okay, but what was the reason behind their such a low number? So there could be a number of reasons. Uh, their low presence could be related to the retrieval methods. During the process of retrieval, some of these bones might have missed. And if there are some carnivores at the sites, like even omnivore, pig, dog, cat, then sometimes these animals might have chewed all of these bones, because these bones are very soft, and sometimes these can be chewed completely by these animals, and these might not have preserved well at the site, and these might not have present at the trenches that we have excavated, and the number might increase when we excavate to when we excavate further trenches at the site. So there could be a number of regions, because it is impossible to think that these people were not exploiting fish, because most of these sites are located just next to Mahanadi, and Mahanadi is well known for its fish resources. Even if you look at fish is a very important part of diet of Odishan people, and it would have been in the past also. So, but their number is not reflected in the archaeological material so far. So that's why I'm telling you again that we need to uh, excavate further, and we need to excavate a site on a larger scale to know the clearer picture. Then if you look at the relative proportion of animals in different phases in different sites, here again we see a different sort of picture. For example, now just see at Kantipaleshwar. So this is the data from Kantipaleshwar phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Now see, at phase 1, cattle and buffalo make a percentage of 57.41. But when we look at their relative proportion during phase 2, then it becomes 36.73. So we see a drastic decrease in the relative proportion of cattle and buffalo bones. Then when we see at phase 3, then again we see a huge increase in the relative proportion. Now their proportion is 72.97%. So in the phase 1, their percentage relative proportion was 57.41, which dips into, and the relative proportion goes down to 36.73, and finally it increases to 72.97% at the final phase. So why was this proportion fluctuating? Was kettles and buffaloes importance reduced during phase 2 and then finally increased again in phase 3? That we need to understand. If you look at the sheep goat, they are almost consistent. In the phase 1 we have 26.85%, in the second again we have 26.23, and in the third 21.62. So we don't see a drastic change. What we see a drastic change in the representation of pig remains. In the phase 1 we have only 1.85% of pig, but in phase 2, we suddenly have a large number of pig bones. So 20.99% we have. And this relative increase in the remains of pig is mainly responsible for the decrease of these cattle and buffalo remains. So pigs were also uh, playing a very important role in diet of the people, especially during the phase two. So these sort of fluctuations we have noticed almost in every phase, every site. For example, if you see at the site of Kapasira, so what do we notice here? Again, if we notice at the relative proportion of cattle and buffalo in different phases, in the early iron phase, their proportion is 78.99%. In middle iron age, their proportion is dips down to 64.7. And if we look at the late iron age, then its percentage further dips down. Okay, same sort of thing. If you look at the pig, then pig is gradually increasing. So pig is gradually getting importance in the society. So in the first phase, it was just 2.52, then 3.53. Then suddenly in third phase, it becomes 10.43. Now here in the previous slide that I have showed you, that pig was getting importance during the second phase, during the middle iron phase. Here what we are seeing, that pig is getting importance during the late iron age or the third phase of the cycle. So these sort of fluctuations are really very difficult to understand. Why was it happening? Why was one particular animal was getting importance in one particular phase and the other animal importance was getting down? That we need to understand further. Again, for that, we need to analyze more material from some uh, largely excavated sites. If you see the importance of a relative proportion of sheep and goats, so here you can say that in the first phase, sheep and goat were not valued much. Their percentage was just 4.420, which is really surprising, because in most of the sites, generally it is the remains of sheep and goat which follow the remains of cattle and buffalo. But suddenly in the second phase, their percentage becomes 22.35, which is a common percentage in almost all the sites. And again in third phase. But in the first phase, their low percentage again is surprising. So there are these sort of fluctuations. And again, we need to keep in mind that we are not getting bones of non-mammalian fauna, which might have missed due to a number of regions. So if we include those absent skeletal data in this, then again, these percentages will fluctuate. Okay, so what was the reason? Why was, uh, what is the reason behind these temporal variations? So temporal variations in the relative proportion of different taxa has also been noted on other sites, which I have not showed you in the present paper. So this sort of variation in subsistence activities in different sites may be a result of individual sites' socio-cultural function. Now we need to understand this socio-cultural function means what these different sites involved in different types of activities, what different types of people were living in these different types site, because in some sites we do not have evidence of pigs, in some sites we have evidence of pigs. So why was pig popular in some RNA sites while it was absent in some RNA sites? We need to understand these sort of fluctuation. Why was the why is there a fluctuation in different uh, relative proportion of different animals in different phases? That we need to still need to understand. This question is still unanswered. Okay, and finally, I would like, before concluding, I would like to suggest some more thing that should be done in future. Now these sites have given us some primary data. Now we at least we have some knowledge about what was happening, what type of animals were exploited by these animals, and what animals were playing what type of role. But if we need to understand more about the past human-animal interactions, then we need to study a larger faunal assemblage. For example, we need to understand what type of secondary role different animals were playing. For example, if there was cattle, if there were buffalo, was this buffalo used for milking purpose? Were dairying activities going on at different sites? Was wool of sheep used at these sites? Was cattle used for agricultural operations? Were cattle used for transportation activities? So these sort of things we still need to understand. We just know that their bones are there at the site, and these were part of the diet on the basis of the presence of, on the basis of the presence of cut marks and chaining marks. That's what we can see, and we can just see their fluctuating percentages in different cultural phases. But we need to go further. We need to understand their secondary role, what other types of roles these animals were playing. But for that, we need to study a larger data set. We need to study a site on a larger scale. So somebody needs to excavate an iron site on a bigger scale, and this faunal data should be systematically analyzed, and this data will definitely throw light on these secondary aspects of these animals. Similarly, the role of pigs in RNA society. Now, whatever picture we have, it is making us confused. Why were pigs absent in some sites and why were they present in some sites? This question needs to be further investigated. Similarly, we need to reconstruct butchering technologies. Now we have evidence of cut marks and chop marks, but as I told you that the elements are very small. So if we need to understand this pattern in a much better manner, we need to study a larger data set. So the larger data set will ultimately help us in reconstructing butchering technologies. Were these people butchering different animals in different ways, or a similar sort of butchering technology was used for all the animals, or there was no standard technology, or these animals were just butchered randomly? So these sort of things uh, uh, need to be understood. Similarly, the role of non-mammalian fauna, because whatever data we have, their numbers are very less. We do not have a fish, birds, mollusk, reptiles. Their number is very less in the sites, and of course they are present in these sites, and these people were exploiting this fauna also. But what was their actual role? Because whatever data we have in our hand, this is not the actual data. Actual data definitely will be different. So next time whenever we are going to excavate a site, we need to concentrate on the recovery of this set of data. And finally, we need to understand what was the relationship between these different settlements. There are so many different settlements which are located on the banks of these rivers. So, and faunal remains can help us in understanding the relationship between these sites in a very good way. But again, we need to study much more data set for doing that. So by saying that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.